Oh, no, no, no. What the f? Alright, I got a lot of rough cut lumber in the barn I gotta bring out. Here we go. I was out delivering mail today and I decided that I would write a script for this video and just try to be kind of normal for once and just give you a real breakdown of what I actually did in this build. But today was the eclipse, so instead of writing a script for this, I spent most of my day wearing silly glasses and staring up at the sky. So we're just gonna watch the video back and wing it. Today we're gonna be building a custom set of cubbies and a matching bench for my friend's yoga studio. This is gonna be a long one, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alright, that's perfect right there. Trying to get them all matching without my... I'm gonna have to build like a wing that comes off of this where I can put stops in, because right now it's not exactly the easiest way to get an accurate cut. But anyway, let's do it. We'll make it work. Perfect. We'll use this one as our reference. Let's throw this piece on top of the other one. Alright, trace this out. So my dad picked up this miter saw for me recently, and thank you so much, Dad, for that. I thought I'd be using this as my go-to crosscut sled. Sled? No. I thought I'd be using this as my go-to crosscut saw, but I decided it would probably be better for cutting dados, whatever that's called. And eventually ended up bringing my miter saw back into the shop. Now I got a board. I don't know, can you see that? We can just slide this up against it. As you can see in the background, if you're a regular watcher, I got rid of all the VHS tapes. I still have them all. They're in boxes in the house, all sorted. And I still got the TV in here so I can watch movies. But I redid it all. I got rid of my outfeed table. I made myself a little workbench over on the side and just kind of rearranged everything and put everything on wheels so I can wheel it out when I need to. Anyway, sorry. I'm distracting from the project. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
So all I've done so far is cut all my shelves. After that, I brought it into this sweet little drum sander that I have right here and ran it through. And then after that, I sanded all of these pieces with my drum sander. I'm gonna go back and sand all of these again later, but we're doing a quick rough sanding before we start assembly. And speaking of assembly, here we are. So this side right here is how it's gonna look, which means we're gonna have a 4-inch plate on the bottom. So I need to cut the tops off of these. And that's where that top shelf is going to be. That'll be a long shelf across the whole top, but just to mark it out, gives me a rough idea of where. If I just mark these two, this one and this one, these are going to be the same as those two, so I should be good. Alright, we marked these somewhere a few days ago. I'm trying this new thing where I kind of talk to the camera as I'm building, because a lot of times I skip details that I think are important. Alright, time for some assembly. Let's put these apart. These are my 2 inside boards. You can lay this one right inside. Making sure I had these shelves separated equally and accurately was pretty easy, because all of these shelves were 10.5 by 10.5, which meant I could take the extra square shelves that I wasn't using at that moment and use them as spacers to make sure that all of my shelves were equally spaced. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. I screwed all these shelves in without worrying about hiding the screws, because I knew the shelves that were going to be on the outside of this cubby system were going to line up exactly with those shelves, hiding those screws. Ta-da! There's a gauge right here on the side, right there, where you can set this in and it'll get you right to where you want it to be. But you could also set this gauge, which I did, 3/4 inch, then drop this down in, lift it just up above the bottom and tighten it, and you'll get the same result. Alright, let's drill some of these shelves, huh? As you can see right there, I just used my Kreg jig to drill out the inside. How do I explain this? Alright. I used the Kreg jig on one side of these shelves. It's on the underside so nobody will see it. And then, yeah, watch right here. See, I just screwed that in, just that side. I'm using the Craig jig bit to pre-drill, and we'll plug them all with dowels afterwards. I'm going through these shots as fast as I can here, but all I did was draw a simple line across the top and the bottom so I could line up all of my screws so they look nice and evenly separated between all of the shelves. I was on vacation while I was building this, and I'll tell you what, it was one of my favorite vacations I've had in a while. I kind of love the winter, especially when I'm out in my shop. Turning on one of the heaters so it gets nice and warm in here, but you can still see the snow falling outside, or when you open up the door you feel the cold breeze come in. There's something so nice about it. Personally, I'd pick the fall always, but anyway. Alright, I measured, cut the top, haven't attached it yet. Now we gotta cut this weird bottom. I'm just measuring out from end to end, but it's going to go up against those ones that were raised up a little bit because there's going to be a kick plate underneath. Hello. I screwed the top on, then it was time to flip it over and screw the bottom into place. God, it weighs a fucking ton. I just applied a little bit of glue, then using my pull saw, Japanese pull saw, I could cut them off. And then one of my favorite people in the world showed up to help me in the shop. I threw her a pair of safety glasses, she made fun of me a bunch, and we put the dowels in and cut them off. I'm not even sure what the hell I'm doing here. Oh yeah, right here I'm just cutting a piece of trim, I guess, for the top to make it kind of look like there's a 2x material along the top. You'll see in a second, I just gotta sand it real quick. Alright, it's time for my least favorite part of every project, sanding, and I'm not gonna bother showing you it because I just sanded this whole thing. There we go. I'm just gluing and brad nailing the top on. See what I mean there? I cut some 45s on the sides and then I could just glue and nail that around the top. Gives it a nicer, cleaner look. Oh, and there's the kick plate. To put the kick plate in, I just nailed in the sides and then nailed in from the top down. The more I worked on this, the more I started to realize that some of these shelves aren't square. So I'm drilling out where I put the dowels in, taking the screws out and making it square, and then I can refill those holes with dowels again. This is so annoying, but it's my fault and there's nothing really I can do about it but take it back apart. Got it. To take it apart, I had to drill out all of the dowels that had crooked shelves, which was a gigantic pain in the ass. I thought I messed up 2. I think I messed up more like 6 or 7. How I didn't notice this, I have zero idea. Regardless, I would drill the dowels, take the screws out, and then brad nail them back in it. And then later on, I will refill those dowels. Alright, so we moved on to the panel glue up table where I'm gluing up the top for this bench that's going to match those cubbies. If you haven't seen the video where I made this table, click down below in the description somewhere down there after you watch this video and go check out that video. I went back in my workshop and I cut some more rough cut pine to create the sides and the top for this bench. Once I had them cut to a rough length, I brought them over to my table saw so I could get one clean side on all of these pieces. And then I grabbed out this piece of shit Craftsman planer that I could run these through and make sure that they were all the same thickness. I then use my Craig jig and some glue to screw together these boards so that I can make the sides and the front and back of this bench the proper height. I'm going to be cutting this down on my table saw, but not before I go and maybe break my new radial arm saw. Alright, I set up this stop block right here so I can make 4 matching cuts on this 3x4 or whatever you want to call it. And right there I'm starting to cut all of my legs to length. I got this interesting way that I ended up making these legs. Alright, so I slid this stop over a little and I turned my miter saw to 45 degrees. And I'm going to cut off a little piece of each one of these so the bottom of the leg will have a bit of an angle. This will make more sense in a second. I cut these to a 45. Why? So I hit a little nail there, huh? I'm cutting these 45s for the bottom of the leg. Here I'm just tracing out a line that I'm going to be removing. And then I'm doing that scribble thing that you now see on YouTube all the time where they're like, ooh, I'm gonna remove this part. Let me scribble on it a little bit. I set my radial arm saw to the proper height so that I could cut the right depth into these legs, which happens to be 3/4 of an inch. And you'll see why in a second, but I'll also tell you why right now. The front, back, and side thickness of this bench is 3/4 of an inch, and to make it sit properly on these legs I had to remove that much. After I cut the proper depth, my camera slowly panned down to the floor for no reason at all. Then I brought these legs over to my table saw and I was able to cut as far and as deep as I could without ruining the leg, and then I had to do the rest of the cut with my Japanese pole saw. After I had one side cut, I could bring it back over to the table saw and remove the other side because now I could see what I was doing, I guess, maybe? I don't remember why, but there you go. There's the leg. You see how that works? Well, maybe you don't see how it works, but I went back over to my new radial arm saw to make these long 45-degree angle cuts, and you won't believe what the fuck happened. The whole thing shut off. I even tried hitting the breaker button there, or whatever the hell it's called, try to reset the whole thing. So I brought it all back over to my table saw, and I ripped it all to its final height, which gave me enough room to cut the rest of these on my miter saw. I guess then I went back to cutting these legs some more. I cut some 45s on the inside of the box for these legs. You'll see all of this later, I'm sorry. I did it all kind of out of order, you know, you get it. Alright, so I decided I wanted to sand the inside of this bench before I assembled this. I screwed down screws around the outside of all of the pieces, and then I could sand it all without it moving around on my workbench. Once I had it all sanded, I applied some glue, and then Brad nailed it all together. I had some really terrible miters, but that's usually what happens to me, so no big deal because I had a plan for that. But before we get to that plan, this is me putting those legs into place. As you can see, I notched out the legs so that they sit right into the corners, and I can nail the outsides of this bench into those legs, helping to keep everything square, and the outside of this bench sits directly on top of the feet of these legs, keeping everything square and secure. I sanded the outside of this using my angle grinder with that 80 grit sanding paper that I always talk about because it's the best way to remove all of the dirt and grime. Then I went back over to my table saw to cut out these strips that I will be using to hide my miters that I did a bad job on, and also give this box a nice clean and, in my opinion, antique look. Alright, let's put these little corner cover thingies on for covering my shitty miters. I can't even tell you how happy I was that I did this little frame around the outside of all of the sides, especially once I added the stain. Something about it was just so nice. But on the day for delivery, I ran into a serious problem with this. Hello, it's the next day. Let's go get that piece of wood for the top of the bench out of that clamping table thing. There we go. Bring it back over into the workshop and we can cut it to size, and then we gotta plane it, sand it, all that bullshit. Let's go. So, like I said, I brought it back over to my workshop. I checked the size on top of that bench, and then I just had to trim off a little bit on either side of this top. We just gotta cut like a 1/4 inch off of the back. Just gonna eyeball it. I cut this little bit off the back so I had a nice straight back that I'm going to be able to attach a piano hinge to later in this video. Then it was time to head outside and sand and clean this up, making everything flush and level with one another using, once again, my angle grinder with an 80 grit sandpaper. I stepped up in grits until I hit 220, and then I could go ahead and apply all of this stain, give it a nice finish. Alright, we got to cut the backing board. 34 by 69. This is the backing board that's going to go on the back of these cubbies. Not only is this going to strengthen this up, but also it's going to be a good backer for the cubbies. Sorry. Geez. I gave it a coat of stain before I put it on so I didn't have to reach into each cubby and stain it. And now it was time to fill in these holes. I don't know if I mentioned, but this is going to be a flip open bench where they can store all their lost and found items. So to do this, I just cut out those little pieces that I'm going to be crack jigging in. I flip the bench upside down and screw them in from the bottom. And now I'm going to be using some more 1/8 inch ply to go over the top. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get an exactly accurate cut because honestly, I'm just not that good. So instead, I cut this piece of 1/8 inch plywood, laid it down inside, and then I could cut all of these little pieces of pine and make a little frame that would go around the entire bottom, hiding any little tiny gaps that I might have left. After that, I applied more stain to everything, which is one of my least favorite things to do. But I finished it all, and then it was time for some poly. Ta-da! And it's pretty warm in here, so I think I'm going to do a coat of shellac. Bullseye shellac. I've never used it before. You know when you haven't really convinced yourself to go buy reading glasses, but you have to take a photo of stuff to zoom in on it with your phone and read the directions? Yeah, I'm at that stage of life. Once I read all the directions, I went ahead and applied 3 coats of shellac. And then, guess what? It was time to deliver this thing, and I fucking dropped it. Oh my god, I was so mad. I went over with my dad and dropped off the cubbies. I have no footage of this because I was just so frustrated I couldn't even turn the camera on. I figured I'd just drop off the cubbies, go back, fix the bench, and bring it over, and that's exactly what I did. And not to mention I was able to come home and redo the bench in the same day and deliver that too. And there we go. We got a nice bench with some storage for lost and found, and then we got all these cubbies. You can use this in a yoga studio, but you could also put this into your mudroom at your house. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Later.
Bye, see you again, and have a good dream.